The way that an airline operates may cause organisational stress. Because so many airlines fail, and high costs and competition are established elements of the airline business, pilots will be subject to pressures which will cause stress. For example, small unserviceabilities may be carried. Duty hours may be stretched to their legal limit. Turnaround times may be reduced, and salaries, bonuses and living allowances may be frozen. In order to cut costs, airlines may reduce recurrent training, such as simulator practice, and this, in turn, can lead to greater flight deck stress, as the pilot's skills may be poorer than they should be. Indeed, lack of hands-on flying is a frequent complaint amongst commercial pilots. Aircraft which are being controlled by the Flight Management Unit, the FMU, fly far more efficiently than when a pilot is making routine decisions. And so airlines aim to operate the aircraft for as much as 96% of the time through the FMU. Organisational stress can therefore lead to fatigue, frustration, lowered skill levels, a feeling of not being appreciated, absenteeism, and poor industrial relations. All of these will add to the contents of the capacity bucket and make overload, mistakes and accidents more likely. In our modern complex lives, we are subjected to a plethora of life stresses, and we often find that we are unable to switch off, so that we carry these stresses from home to the workplace, and vice versa. This table has been devised to give a weighting to the stresses in an average Westerner's life. Different weight would be attached to the stresses in other cultures. For example, in Japan, loss of a job attracts a higher weighting than in the West. As a guide only, to indicate your own stress levels, add together the marks for each event occurring in your life in the last 6 months, and see into which category of stress you fall. Physiological stress can be subdivided into external factors and internal factors. External factors, such as heat and cold, noise, vibration and humidity, are dealt with in the lesson on physical stress in Part 1. Internal physiological factors are such things as illness, lack of sleep, thirst, fatigue and pain, which are dealt with in the lesson on problem areas for pilots in Part 1. It is possible to imagine that stress will be present in the future because you experienced stress in the past in a similar situation. For example, a recent approach to an airfield in turbulent conditions may cause a pilot to anticipate the same problem next time. He may, as a result, approach at too high an airspeed on the next occasion when the air is in fact calm. Unpleasant events may apparently be completely forgotten, but the anxiety associated with them can be brought to the surface by one of the senses. Perhaps hearing a stall warning in calm conditions will remind one of the turbulent approach and trigger a general adaptation syndrome response. Now that we have looked at the causes of stress, we can summarize the effects. In terms of performance, the relationship between stress and performance can be represented by the now familiar upturned U-graph. When there is little or no stress, there is a drop in vigilance and performance is poor, represented by the upgoing curve. As stress increases, so does performance up to its optimum or break point, which is at the peak of the graph. If stress increases beyond this break point, then performance degrades. As regards health, the short-term effects of stress are nausea, headaches and tiredness. But if the stress is long-term, these effects will continue, but more serious illnesses will also ensue. Ulcers, raised blood pressure, heart disease, and a generally reduced immune system will make the individual more susceptible to other illnesses. Behaviour will also suffer from both short-term and long-term stress. In a stressful situation, such as a delayed departure, tempers may be frayed, patience will be reduced, some crew may become aggressive, and some may laugh nervously. In any event, performance will reduce. Stress has major cognitive effects, that is, effects on the thought process. Short-term memory loss may occur, and things may be misplaced or forgotten, such as radio frequencies. Long-term memory procedures may be forgotten and substituted by earlier learnt behaviour. This is known as regression. For example, a pilot may remember an aerodrome as having a left-hand circuit, whereas now it has a right-hand circuit. Fixation or mental block may occur where it becomes impossible to review what has been done and consider other solutions. This will lead to a loss of situational awareness, and confirmation bias will creep in. A pilot may have several visual cues, such as towns, roads, and railways, which appear to confirm his position. He may not admit the possibility of error. In our example, a positive fix could be obtained from the VORs at Lydd and Dover. How can we cope with stress? As stress affects us all in different ways and to a different degree, we will all have different coping strategies. However, the first step is to acknowledge that we are under stress. Coping strategies are described as action coping, cognitive coping, or symptom-directed coping. In action coping, the individual attempts to reduce the stress, perhaps by delegating a task or by asking another person, such as an air traffic controller, for assistance. He may remove the cause of the stress, such as by delaying a departure in bad weather. Cognitive coping involves reducing the impact of stress on the individual by repressing or denying the existence or extent of the stressor. For example, a pilot might say on a bad weather approach, "It will clear up in a minute." He may feel better, but he may now undervalue a danger. Symptom-directed coping is achieved by dealing with the symptoms of stress by the use of drugs, such as coffee, alcohol, and prescribed medicines. In all cases of stress, the best solution is to avoid, get rid of, or minimize the stress, perhaps by delaying a departure in bad weather. This is far better than denying the extent of the stressor, or hiding it or treating its effects. If we apply what we have learnt about stress to the flight deck, there are certain actions that can be taken to avoid or reduce stress, such as by increasing one's skill levels and experience. Continuous training in simulators is one of the main tools used by airlines for practicing emergencies, such as engine failure. A professional approach to flying, that is, doing things thoroughly, will reduce risks. Thorough flight briefing, correct air traffic language, and responsible behaviour off-duty all go to create an environment of safety. We are not concerned in this syllabus with crew resource management, but a satisfactory relationship between crew members on the flight deck is essential to avoid stress. Roles should be correctly assigned. Seniority should not become a barrier to communication, and the skills of all crew members should be used. Lastly, in our study of mental stress, we will look at what we can do away from the workplace to reduce or avoid stress. We have seen that long-term stress and fatigue are usually caused by long-term or deep-seated stressors, such as financial worries or difficult relationships. Admitting that one has a stress problem is the starting point to recovery. As we see in the lesson on alcohol abuse in Part 1, the association Alcoholics Anonymous requires their members to start every meeting with the words, "I'm Alison. I'm an alcoholic." It may sound brutal, but it is the basis of recovery. Some programs for avoiding stress include a health and fitness regime. Regular physical exercise reduces heart rate and blood pressure, releases pleasurable endorphins, and stimulates the production of hormones and enzymes which assist the immune system. Relaxation techniques such as yoga and meditation will help to reduce mental stress levels and will have physiological benefits. Some people find solace and so reduce stress in religion, especially after bereavement. Others may seek counselling from experts. A counsellor's most frequent starting point in reducing stress is to get the individual to recognise the cause of the stress and his role in it. You will recall that it was Hans Selye who developed the concept of stress and the general adaptation syndrome. He recommended an approach to stress which he described as living wisely in accordance with natural laws. In his book, The Stress of Life, he proposed the following principles as important dimensions of living wisely. Adopting an attitude of gratitude toward life, rather than seeking revenge for injuries or slights. Acting towards others from altruistic, rather than self-centered motives. Retaining a capacity for wonder and delight in the genuinely good. Finding a purpose for one's life and expressing one's individuality in fulfilling that purpose. And keeping a healthy sense of modesty about one's goals or achievements. I wonder how often these principles are taught in flight training schools today. This concludes our lesson on mental stress, in which we have considered the causes of stress, the beneficial and harmful effects of stress, and some of the coping strategies we can employ to help us deal with stress.